Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. This is Kelsey here today with Kyle Joyce. He's the CEO and co-founder at Enver Studio. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely great to have you. So Kyle, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I've been an entrepreneur since I was about 14. I've been starting different businesses. I started an apparel business and printed for all the local high schools in my area, scaled that up to 7 figures.
Wow.
And then I was able to sell a portion of that business and move on to making mobile games where we have some private government contract deals and making different mobile games across all genres, which led me into creating Enver Studio with my other two co-founders, where we build augmented reality and virtual reality games for the Oculus Quest and now the Pico Neo headset.
Oh, wow, so interesting. So tell me more about that.
Yeah. So we realized that, once the Oculus headset came out, there was a lot of growth in that sector of gaming. And gaming is, a massive space. Like it's going to hit, 300 billion, in the next couple of years. And, we wanted to capitalize on that opportunity as, mobile is a very saturated sector. And, you have Xbox console, all these different, sides, but VR was an emerging space and we wanted to take advantage of that. And there wasn't a lot of money being invested into VR. It was mainly independent developers or very small studios. And so we wanted to take a different angle where we were a medium-sized studio and we wanted to make a big focus on building out, high quality VR games. And so we saw an opportunity to be a big player in that space. So we started investing anywhere from 100 to 150K per game. And we have one game out right now called Moto X. And we have another game called Dead of the Sea releasing in December and two more games releasing in January of 2023.
Congratulations, that's amazing. And it sounds like you've really been able to scale the business over the last few years.
Yeah, this year specifically, was a very good year. We combined our approach a little bit with 75% of it was working on our own IP, and 25% of it was focusing on services. And with that, we were able to generate a very good year for sure.
So it sounds like a lot of what you do is that brand awareness, kind of getting the name out there. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's our biggest focus right now is with game studios. In the past, people weren't really focused on growing a community for the studio. They were just focused on releasing a game and building a community for that game. We're trying to take a little different of approach where our studio has a community behind it. And what that really means is we're able to connect with people in the VR space and be able to understand what do they actually want to see, what games do they want, so we can have really good relationships with our users and our customers, and then use that to have more community-led projects and games, and ideally expand that way with our network of creators.
Talk to me a little bit more about how you're able to get that feedback in your community.
Yeah, so what we did is we partnered and we acquired a few really big creators in the VR space, and our total reach is close to about 400,000 now, total audience size. And so what we're doing is partnering and acquiring these creators to then grow the community as big as possible, push people towards Discord. And then in that Discord, we're able to ask different questions about what types of games do people want to see. And then once we have general ideas, like maybe a horror game or maybe a sports game, we can really dive in and get ideas and feedback about what people specifically want to see, and then take the ideas of the community and then turn it into a game. And we've noticed that people really like to hear that, or really like to see that, because they see that their voice is getting heard, and it's very uncommon in the gaming space.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you are targeting gamers in a way, but it also sounds like a large portion of your marketing is geared more towards partners. Is that correct?
Totally is. And that's like one of the things is, attracting talent is really important for us. Different designers, developers, and VR, since it's still very new, it's very hard to find people that, are very in touch with, the different technologies, the different optimization techniques that go into a VR, AR experience. And so that's why, one of our biggest things with growing our brand is being able to really understand the VR community, so that the people that are building and working in the community see us and then are attracted to us. And, that comes with different partners, that comes with, different team members, and that, as well as different brands, that are expanding in the VR space.
hmm hmm So, How have you been able to reach those potential partners?
So it's a really good question because it's definitely been a very difficult, thing. It has not been easy, and one of the best ways that we found is going to in-person conferences and events. And obviously, following COVID this year, specifically, there was a lot more events. So we attended the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco. We're able to connect with people all over the world, people that were in VR or people that had connections to VR. We
Mhm.
were also able to attend PAX West in Seattle, and we met a lot of different people building in VR. We met different publishers, and so that was like those two events were some of the biggest ones, where
Mhm.
we were able to connect and meet the most people. But outside of that, we get really creative with how we're sending our cold emails and how we're trying to reach out to people. And we found that, the more creative we can get in our emails, the more specific we can kind of, narrow down our value and our offer, then that has also been working out really well.
Mhm. Tell me a little bit more about what that looks like.
So one of the biggest, things that we're trying to get and the people that we're trying to partner with is creators.
Mhm.
And mainly because they understand the community, they understand the audience, and a lot of times they know what games are going to do well and what games are not going to do well. And
Mhm.
so when we're trying to reach out to creators, they get a lot of emails all the time, right? They get people hitting them up to promote a game. They get people, different brands trying to send them products. And so like we want to stand out a little differently, with that approach. Like one of the biggest things is just getting them on a call,
Mhm.
explaining to them like our long tail vision of what we're trying to do, and then try to come up with a deal to bring them onto the team in some capacity. So whether that's giving them a portion of one of our games, whether that's onboarding them in like a monthly retainer model. But once we're able to get them on a call and explain like, hey, we're really trying to be a community first studio and we're trying to make a massive bet on VR, people get really excited because creators also know how difficult game studios can be. And
Mhm.
so what we've noticed is hearing from us and our perspective on how we want the community to decide what to build next. That
Mhm.
really excites them, and that gets people want to be getting involved with Enver Studio. So that's been our main goal and our main focus point, at least for Q4. Is going to be trying to onboard as many VR creators and trying to understand from them what do they actually want to see based on the all the data that they have, and talking to their fans and their audience. And I think that's like the most impactful thing, because when it goes to any product, like what to build next is so important. And the really only way to understand that is having as much data as possible. And in VR and gaming, right? It's not a need to have, it's only a want to have. And so
Mhm.
you have to really focus on the community and understand, okay, what do they want to see? Because that's going to really what inclines people to make a purchase, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, no, totally. So it sounds like to me there are kind of three different areas that set you apart from your competition. One, it sounds like that long-term vision, which I'd love to hear more about. Two, it sounds like how data-based your approach is to developing and acquisition of talent. But also three, talking about how you have built this community. Are there any other ways? Do you want to elaborate on any of those ways that you stand out from your competition?
Yeah, I would say the other big way, I mean, obviously, through our creator and through our audience approach, like that's definitely one of the biggest ways. But, outside of that, it's how we're growing our different channels. And outside of like partnering with creators, we're building our own internal channels on YouTube Shorts, on TikTok, and we're publishing VR news content, publishing new games content that's rolling out. And then
Mhm.
we're also focusing on our podcast. And our podcast is something that we filmed a few episodes so far, but we're going to be releasing a full season right around Christmas time and into the new year. And that's when we're able to get people of bigger games, of bigger studios, especially games that the community knows and loves, get them on the podcast and learn about their experience building these games. And
Mhm.
that's one of our goals of how we want to connect with other studios and build relationships with other studios, but also give the audience and give the community more of an inside scoop of what actually goes into building games and what goes into building some of their favorite games. And so because the VR space is still relatively small, it's a lot easier to get big people on the phone and on our podcast comparatively to Activision or other major studios, if that makes sense.
Mhm, mhm. No, absolutely. So, I mean, just a little kind of like a sneak preview. What is the name of your podcast? When can people expect it? You said December, and that's really not that far away, as crazy as that sounds. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so our podcast is We Get VR. And our website's going to be rolling out within the next couple of weeks. And the podcast is mainly focusing on connecting and understanding different games. So everybody that's a guest on the podcast is either a content creator or a founder of a game that's on the Oculus store or on the secondary marketplace.
Yeah.
And we dive into how do they get started? How do they come up with the game idea? What
Yep.
the feedback they've learned from the community. And then the biggest thing and some of the key value questions that we're focusing on is how did you adapt and change your game following the community and what they sort of suggested and how the feedback of the community essentially.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure you're able to use that for your own content marketing, talking about how important it is for those partnerships and really hearing the voice of, the users.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, because VR is still new, it's completely different in terms of saturation compared to like mobile and console. And so that means there's a lot more opportunity for unique ideas, but also ideas that we've seen before, right? In Xbox, PlayStation, stuff like that. And so there is so many different things to build. And a lot of the time, simple ideas haven't even been built yet. So that's also why connecting with the community is important because when you post a TikTok, you post a short, and one of the comments is like, "Oh, I would love to see a badminton game," and then that has 10,000 likes. Well, you know that you can double down on that and post more videos. Hey, do you want to see a badminton game? And then that data is so important in terms of what to build next. And so that's our main focus.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So what would be one thing you would want our listeners to know either about the VR space, about Enver Studio?
I would say, one of the biggest things is it's going to get really exciting. Apple glasses are going to be rolling out pretty soon, and that's going to, replace the iPhone in a lot of ways. And it's going to be an entirely different interface to interact with. And, a lot of people say that VR is not really there yet. And I would agree, right? It's still an entertainment, platform. But as we expand into AR, and especially over the next 5 years, I think we're going to hit that, mass adoption, and people are going to understand like how crazy VR experiences are going to get and AR experience. And gaming is one section, but it goes way deeper than gaming, and it goes into like creating relationships and real connections, in the virtual world. And so I think one of the biggest things is that keep an eye on the space because it's not where it's not where it's going to be yet, but over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see expansive growth, and it's going to be something that will come out of nowhere for a lot of people that read Ready Player One or have seen the movie. If that makes sense.
That's fantastic. And it sounds like, you're very passionate about one, the space, two, the growth. I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. We definitely are. And that's kind of, again, like why we built the company to begin with is because, Ready Player One is one of our favorite books and movies. And a lot of that is possible now, even though it doesn't seem like it, but it's the world's going to get, a crazy place with technology, and VR is going to be a massive component of that.
So Kyle, what would be one thing in this next year that you hope to be celebrating either personally or with Enver Studio?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say one of the biggest things is grow our community to over a million, million users in the VR space, and get really good feedback on our game Dead of the Sea, and ideally get that to the primary Oculus store and have some great growth there.
That's fantastic. Well, everybody, thanks for having Kyle Joyce on. Again, he's the CEO and co-founder at Enver Studio. Kyle, it's been great talking about kind of like exploring the VR space, the future of VR, and then really like how you've been working to connect the community in that data-based approach. So I think that's fantastic, and this has been a great conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me on.